He hadn't made a sound since the day Elias found him trembling near the canyon ridge. But now, with smoke curling through the scrub and 2 orphaned bobcat kits crying beneath a collapsing ledge, the silence finally cracked. From the dust rose the once voiceless kitten, eyes blazing, body braced between danger and the helpless. And then, it happened. The sound that followed didn't just break the silence, it stopped Elias cold, made the earth feel still. Because no one, not even Elias, was prepared for what the bobcat finally said, or why. Before we show you the moment that left even seasoned rangers speechless, make sure you're here for it. Hit subscribe now, because what this wild bobcat did next, you truly won't believe. The desert always had a way of swallowing sound. Wind might carve across the ridge, low and whistling like a memory trying to return. But deeper in the canyons, where the light didn't always reach and the rocks leaned in close, silence reigned. It was in these carved bones of the earth that Elias Creed made his patrols, alone, unhurried, uninvited. At 36, Elias looked more like a man who fought fires than someone who wrote up wildlife reports. Lean, sun-scored, and deliberate in every step. He didn't smile often, but not out of coldness, just economy. You learned, in this kind of wilderness, to conserve even your emotions. He wasn't expecting anything that morning. The sky was clear, the trailhead empty. A light breeze traced the ridge, carrying the dry perfume of juniper and warm stone. Elias had been rerouted from the usual trails after a hiker reported strange noises, echoing down into the Stone Hook Ravine. The map didn't even have a name for it. Most rangers didn't come out this far, too dry, too steep, too easy to twist an ankle and end up a half-mile from help. But Elias didn't mind. In fact, he preferred it. He parked the quad at the edge of the bluff and walked the last mile in. The terrain dipped sharply, slopes of shale and cracked roots, boulders scarred from years of heat and flash floods. There were signs of life, barely, a scat print here, a lizard darting out from under a shadow. But it was the claw marks that made him pause. Not deep like a mountain lion's. Finer. More spaced. Elias knelt, brushed the rock lightly. Yum. Definitely feline. Likely bobcat. But odd. The stride was wrong. The spacing jittery. Like the animal had been limping, or panicking. He followed the trail down, deeper into the ravine, where the light dimmed and the air thinned. The silence grew heavier. And then, he saw it. A flick of movement behind a split boulder. He stopped mid-step, instinct halting his breath. No sudden moves. Let it reveal itself. The creature stepped out slowly. A kitten. Not the kind you'd find on porches or under sheds. This was wild. Born of scrublands and instinct, not litter boxes. A juvenile bobcat, no more than 5 months old. Its fur was a dusty gray-brown, patched with faint rosettes and tiny scars. Ears tall, black-tipped, twitching slightly. Tail short, ringed like smoke bands. The frame was bony, underfed, legs stiff from exertion. But its eyes, wide, yellow amber, unblinking, met Elias's directly. He expected it to run. It didn't. The moment stretched, either of them breathing. Then the kitten opened its mouth. And nothing came out. Not a hiss. Not a yowl. Not even a kitten's broken mew. Just silence. Elias's brow furrowed. The kitten tried again. Same result. Its mouth moved, neck flexed, even chest shifted slightly. But not a sound was born. He crouched lower. Carefully, quietly. "No, Mom?" he said, voice low, conversational. The kitten watched him. "Where'd you come from, huh?" Still silence. Still that stare. Elias reached slowly into his pack, pulled a protein bar, unwrapped it, and tore off a chunk. He placed it on a flat rock between them and waited. The kitten inched forward, not cautious like a predator, but as if it expected punishment. It sniffed. Ate. Fast. Too fast. Elias noticed the pads, soft, uncalloused. Not a kitten raised on wild terrain. These were paws that had never touched hot stone until recently. Someone had you, didn't they? He murmured. Still, the kitten didn't run. He took that as permission. From his pack, Elias pulled a soft canvas wrap and gently moved closer. The kitten stiffened, but didn't bolt. It pressed itself low, body trembling, frozen between fight and flight, without the voice to scream either way. It's okay, Elias said softly, then placed the wrap gently over the small body. He expected a struggle. There was none. Just a faint vibration, like a purr, but muted, uneven. Not comfort. More like instinct trying to mimic something it had once known. He tucked the wrapped kitten close to his chest. You're not supposed to be here, he whispered, looking around the dry silence. But neither was I once. The way back up was slow. Not because of terrain, Elias had run steeper trails and worse boots, but because he kept checking the bundle in his arms, half expecting it to vanish. Or worse, go limp. Back at the quad, he laid the kitten on a towel in the back storage bin, clipped the lid open for air, and drove back to the ranger outpost. The station was a single-level cabin, half buried in desert brush. There was no AC, no working landline, and the radio went out every time the sun hit its peak. But it was home. And it was safe. He placed the kitten, still silent, still alert, into an old dog crate lined with fleece and placed a shallow dish of water inside. Then sat across the room and watched. An hour passed. Then 2. The kitten didn't sleep. Didn't whine. Just sat upright, eyes following Elias like he was the only signal in a frequency-less world. By the 3rd hour, Elias got up and left the room. He needed a second opinion. Marla Jensen wasn't easy to find, by design. She'd left the Wildlife Service years ago after a dispute over a cougar euthanization order. Since then, she lived out in a trailer compound with solar power and goats. But she owed Elias a favor. He called. Once. Left no message. Just coordinates. She showed up 5 hours later. You better have coffee, were her first words, brushing dust from her boots. Elias opened the crate quietly. Marla looked in. Whistled low. Wild? Looks that way, Elias said. But not raised that way. Marla knelt beside the crate, coaxed the kitten forward with a bit of venison jerky. The kitten inched, sniffed, ate, silent the whole time. She ran her fingers gently along its throat. Checked the jaw. Felt the ribs. No wounds. No obvious break. But look here, under the chin. She tilted the kitten's head and pointed. A faint scar, barely healed. Surgical? Elias asked. Or restraint? Marla muttered. Could be someone tried to collar him, cage him, maybe even mute him. Mute him? There are backwoods breeders who think vocal cats are harder to sell. Sometimes they botch things. Elias's fists clenched. So he was someone's pet. More like someone's failed project, she said. And now he's yours. Elias sat back on his heels, studying the kitten, now curled in the back of the crate. I can't register him. I can't report him. Marla shrugged. Then don't. That's illegal. You think he cares? Elias exhaled sharply, then looked at her. What do I do? Marla stood, brushing off her hands. Give him time. Give him space. Give him something no one else did. What's that? Freedom. And someone who listens, even when he can't speak. As she left, Elias sat beside the crate and stared through the mesh at the creature staring back. He didn't know what kind of storm was coming. But somewhere, deep in his bones, he knew this kitten's silence wasn't empty. It was loaded. Waiting. And the moment it finally broke, it would shake more than just the canyon. It would tear something open, something that had stayed buried far too long. The kitten didn't sleep for 2 nights. Elias kept the crate beside his cot, the mesh door angled so the bobcat could see him at all times. The tiny body didn't curl like a normal feline, too stiff, like its muscles didn't know how to rest. Every time Elias stirred in the night, he caught those amber eyes staring at him in the dark. Not frightened. Not wild. Just waiting. By dawn on the third morning, Elias had decided the name Mute would stick. It wasn't a joke. It was reverence. A badge of survival. That tiny scar on his throat, so clean it looked almost surgical, made Elias burn every time he glanced at it. Someone had silenced this animal on purpose. And whoever they were still out there. He took a day's leave. Unofficial, of course. Rangers didn't clock out for side missions. But Elias had a plan. He drove 40 miles to the edge of an unregistered property, a burnout compound once used as an exotic pet operation. It had been raided and shut down 5 months ago. Most of the animals were recovered. Some weren't. No arrests had stuck. Too many aliases. Too few leads. Case buried under bureaucracy. But Elias remembered something now. There had been reports of a bobcat litter, 4 kittens. All underweight. 2 survived. 1 vanished in transport. The timeline fit. The scar. The strange behavior. The soft paw pads. He took a few photos. Sent them anonymously to Marla. Within an hour, she replied. That kitten is one of them. You can bet your badge on it. That night, back at the outpost, Elias opened the crate fully for the first time. Mute didn't bolt. Didn't hide. He stepped out cautiously, nose twitching, tail low, as if the space itself could collapse if he moved too fast. Elias placed a piece of raw chicken on the floor. Mute crept to it, ate in silence. You're free to go, Elias said softly. But I'm betting you won't. Mute paused, then did something strange. He walked toward Elias, not fast, not playful, but deliberate. He stepped across the cabin floor and pressed his thin body lightly against Elias's leg. And stayed there. Just stayed. The next week settled into a rhythm. Elias didn't pretend it was normal. He kept Mute indoors during the day, let him explore the closed-off side yard at dusk. He built a perch by the window, left the crate open, rotated fresh bedding. He didn't name him on official forms. Didn't document anything. Because this wasn't a rescue. It was a promise. But he needed answers. Marla returned 3 days later, this time with gear, a thermal scanner, a throat imaging camera, and a saliva swab kit. I'm not here as a friend, she told Elias at the door. I'm here as a scientist. Elias nodded. Be both. She examined Mute carefully, then sat on the porch with Elias afterward, the heat settling in as the sun dipped behind the buttes. He's not permanently damaged, she finally said. There's vocal tension, scar tissue, but no total paralysis. He should be able to make sound. Then why hasn't he? Marla stared out across the canyon. You ever met someone so hurt they forgot how to ask for help? Elias looked back toward the crate. Mute lay curled in the corner, tail tucked around himself. Still watching. I think he's choosing silence, Marla said. Why? Because silence kept him alive. That stuck in Elias's chest like a thorn. Later that evening, while Marla packed up her gear, Elias stepped out behind the cabin to check the motion cams he'd set up earlier. He had spotted more tracks around the perimeter, too big for a bobcat. Maybe coyote. Maybe something worse. He reviewed the footage. Nothing. Then he noticed it. At 3:11 a.m. the previous night, a figure briefly flashed across the lower trail cam. A human. Moving fast. No flashlight. No gear. Just the silhouette of a man in a hooded jacket, glancing behind him as if making sure he wasn't being followed. Elias froze. There shouldn't be anyone up here. The gate had been locked. The fence wasn't high, but the property was posted. He rewound. Snapped a frame. Face obscured. No way to ID? But it confirmed what he feared. Someone had been on his land. Recently. He printed the still and taped it to his desk. Circled it with a red marker. Mute might have been dumped, but maybe not forgotten. The next day, Elias took Mute hiking. He needed to see how the bobcat moved on terrain. If there was weakness. If his silence was matched by fragility. They hiked to Black Hollow, A bowl-shaped dip in the earth surrounded by sheer sandstone. Good visibility. Few exit routes. Safe. Or so Elias thought. Halfway through the basin, Mute froze. Tail stiff. Body bristled. Elias followed his gaze. At the edge of the rocks, about 30 yards out, sat a crude snare, thin wire strung low between two stakes. New. Clean. He hadn't said that. Someone else had. Elias crouched beside it. No rust. No tracks. Someone smart. That's when he noticed something else. Parallel boot prints, leading down the ridge. Deliberate. Patterned. Heavy treads. Not a hiker. A trapper. Elias felt the rage rise, hot and bitter. This was protected land. Poaching wasn't just illegal, it was desecration. He turned to Mute. The bobcat sat perfectly still. Eyes narrowed. Watching the snare like it was alive. "You've seen one of these before, haven't you?" Elias murmured. Mute didn't blink. Back at the cabin, Elias filed an unofficial report. Anonymous tip. Ranger protocol. No names. But the next night, something changed. Mute paced restlessly. Didn't eat. Didn't curl in the crate. He clawed the back door, gently at first, then urgently. Elias opened it. Mute sprinted into the darkness. Elias followed with a flashlight, boots crunching over gravel. The desert air was thick, heavier than usual. Then he saw it, Mute standing on the ridge, completely still, silhouetted against the starlight. Below, two men walked along the canyon wall, flashlights off, rifles slung. Mute looked back at Elias once. Just once. And then he turned and vanished into the dark. Elias whispered, "What the hell are you doing?" He stayed up all night. Mute didn't return. Not by morning. Not by noon. Not by sunset. The silence, once familiar, now felt wrong. Empty. Like something had been taken, not just absent. And for the first time, Elias wondered. Had the bobcat gone to hide? Or had he gone to hunt? Elias didn't sleep that night. He stayed on the porch, eyes fixed on the canyon edge like a man waiting for smoke. The wind had picked up, whispering through the scrub brush and old bones of the desert. Somewhere out there, Mute was moving. Not as a pet. Not as a rescue. But as something far older and deeper than Elias wanted to admit. A shadow returning to its shape. The next morning came dry and windless. Sunlight spilled over the buttes like molten steel. Still no sign of Mute. No tracks. No paw prints. Just the uneasy stillness that precedes something breaking. By noon, Elias made his decision. He geared up, boots, sidearm, radio, binoculars. He left a strip of jerky by the crate and a note pinned to the cabin door just in case Marla came by. Then he walked into the canyon. He took the south trail first, toward Black Hollow, where he'd last seen the snare. The trap was gone. In its place, fresh boot prints. 2 sets. One smaller, light. The other heavier, more direct. He followed them down through the ravine, past the dry stream bed, up to the limestone cut known as Widow's Hook. That's where he heard it. A soft sound. Not a call. Not an animal. Something human. A voice. Male. Raspy. Should have left him. Stupid thing's useless now. Elias dropped behind a rock shelf and crawled forward, slowly. Through the narrow break in the stone, he saw them. 2 men. Late 30s. Tactical gear. One with a rifle, the other carrying a metal case with mesh vents. A transport cage. Empty. The smaller man kicked a clump of dirt. He was supposed to be trained. I thought he was. He was. Until someone got to him first, the other replied. Don't matter. Find him, cage him again. This time we weld it shut. Elias's gut went cold. They were here for Mute. Not random poachers. Not passing trappers. These were the ones who had owned him. The ones who had silenced him. He leaned back, reached for the radio. Crack. A rock shifted under his boot. A single pebble tumbled down the ledge. Both men froze. Did you hear that? Elias ducked lower. Then, movement to his right. Fast. Silent. Low to the ground. It was Mute. Emerging from the brush-like smoke, his body hugged the dirt, amber eyes burning with alertness. He didn't look at Elias. Didn't stop. He circled the men slowly, deliberately. Like a predator stalking its prey, but without the panic of a trapped animal. The smaller man raised his weapon. There he is! Get him! Elias reacted without thinking. He stood. Put it down! Both men spun toward the shout. Elias had his weapon drawn, not raised but ready. Step away from the cage. The larger man smirked. Ranger, this isn't your jurisdiction. You're on federal conservation land, Elias said coldly. And you're carrying illegal traps and transport gear for a protected species. That is my jurisdiction. The smaller one panicked. He aimed his rifle toward Elias, but the bobcat moved first. Mute launched from a nearby ledge, not at Elias, not at the shooter, but at the rifle itself. Claws struck the barrel, knocking it sideways. The shot went wide, echoing through the canyon. Elias charged. In the chaos, the smaller man stumbled back, dropping the weapon. The larger one lunged for Mute, but the bobcat vanished behind a boulder. Elias tackled the second man hard, slamming him into the rock wall. The cage dropped with a metallic clatter. The first man scrambled to his feet, bleeding from the forearm where Mute had swiped him. This isn't over, he shouted, clutching the wound. That cat belongs to us. We made him. Elias raised his gun. You made nothing. They backed off, panting, shaking. The larger man helped the other up. No more bravado now. Just fear. Next time, Elias said, you won't get to run. The two disappeared down the trail, leaving the cage behind. Silence returned, hot, thick, heavy. Elias turned slowly. And saw him. Mute stood atop a rock, tail low, chest heaving. His left ear was nicked, blood fresh across his jaw. But his eyes weren't scared. They were alive. You okay? Elias asked softly. Mute blinked. And then, he opened his mouth. At first, Elias thought it was another mute gesture. A mimic. But no, there was a sound. Broken. Croaky. Barely above a whisper. A short, raspy growl. Not a roar. Not a scream. Just a sound. Real. Imperfect. His. Elias felt it hit his chest like a punch. He lowered the weapon. Walked forward. Mute didn't run. Instead, the bobcat limped over the rocks, chest still rising, throat raw. He stepped beside Elias, brushed his shoulder once, then collapsed beside the dropped cage. And stared at it. As if to say, never again. That night, Elias didn't put Mute back in the crate. He left the door open. The porch light on. Mute didn't go far. Just curled by the threshold, tail tucked, head high. His breathing still rasped. His limbs ached. But his silence was broken. And Elias understood something he hadn't before. Mute hadn't lost his voice because of trauma. He'd chosen silence. Until it mattered more to protect someone else than to stay hidden. And now, he'd found it again. Not for himself. But for Elias. The canyon wind that morning had a strange hum to it, like the land itself was holding its breath. Elias crouched on a sun-bleached rock, watching the little bobcat with narrow, searching eyes. The kitten stood perfectly still at the edge of the ravine, fur trembling in the heat haze, his gaze locked on something Elias couldn't yet see. For weeks, this small creature had followed Elias silently, never mewing, never crying, only watching. And now, something had shifted. Elias rose slowly, brushing dust from his jeans. What do you see, little guy? The kitten didn't move. Not an ear twitch. Just that eerie stillness. Then, Elias heard it, faint, too faint for any normal ear, but he caught it, a muffled chirp, high-pitched and panicked, like a cry trapped behind stone. He stepped forward, and the canyon widened into a pocket of collapsed shale, a half-hidden crevice carved by erosion. There was no trail down, just jagged descent and heat-slick rock. But there, tucked in the shadows below, two tiny shapes. "Bobcat kits," Elias whispered. Alone. And crying. It didn't make sense. The mother wouldn't leave two newborns. Unless. He scanned the terrain. Drag marks, a spatter of dried blood near a cactus, feathers from a red-tailed hawk. Predators had been through. The mother was gone. The kits mewed again, faint, desperate. Elias didn't hesitate. "Stay," he said to the voiceless kitten beside him, knowing full well the cat wouldn't listen. And he was right. By the time Elias had scaled halfway down, careful not to dislodge the brittle ledge, he saw a blur of motion beside him, fur and claws and courage. The silent one had followed. "Wait, what are you doing?" Too late. The kitten leapt ahead, navigating narrow stone ledges like a ghost through shadows. He disappeared into the crevice where the cries came from. Elias's heart pounded. "No, no, no!" He moved faster, cutting his hand on shale, skidding across dust-covered stone. The crevice widened into a small hollow, and what he saw stopped him cold. The kitten, his voiceless companion, was curled protectively around the two crying kits. His body arched, tail flicking. He looked wild. Fierce. Maternal, even. Then the ground shifted. A deep, ancient crack, one Elias hadn't seen, yawned beneath them. The shale began to give. Dust exploded upward. The ledge was going to collapse. "Get out!" Elias shouted, already dropping to his stomach, arm outstretched. The kitten looked up. And for the first time, he made a sound. It wasn't a growl. Not a yowl. It wasn't even a meow. It was a call. Something between a chirp and a bark, sharp and commanding. Not to Elias, but to the kits. The tiny cubs froze. Then, remarkably, they moved, toward him. Elias lunged, grabbing all three in a split-second bundle just as the ledge beneath them shattered, tumbling rock and dust into the canyon below. They tumbled backward together, landing hard in a patch of sagebrush. Elias coughed, cradling them close. The kittens were alive, shaken, terrified, but alive. And the voiceless kitten? He was looking up at Elias with calm eyes, like he'd known this would happen all along. "You spoke," Elias whispered, still catching his breath. "You finally spoke." But the kitten didn't answer again. He just blinked slowly, as if to say, only when it mattered. Back at the trailer, the desert sun began to dip. A storm was rumored, but no clouds showed. Elias laid the kits in a shallow box lined with old flannel. He'd make the drive to the sanctuary in the morning. Until then, they'd rest. He crouched beside his silent companion, the once voiceless hero. "You waited until they needed you," Elias murmured, stroking behind the kitten's ear. "And not a moment before." The kitten leaned into his hand. That night, Elias recorded the call. Just once, just faintly, it came again, almost as if the kitten knew he wanted it remembered. Not for fame. Not for study. But for proof. Proof that even the quietest creatures hold a voice worth hearing. Sometimes, they're just waiting for the right reason to use it. The video went online quietly. Elias hadn't meant for it to go viral. It was just a clip. A call. A man in a bobcat kit, caught in a moment that didn't ask for attention, only understanding. But people felt it. Comments flooded in. "This sound. I didn't know animals could mean something like that. I cried. Why did I cry at one chirp? I haven't spoken to my brother in 6 years. This made me want to." A wildlife rescue offered funding. A children's hospital used the video to explain bravery. A speech therapist played the clip in her sessions for kids too scared to speak. Because the story wasn't about a bobcat. It was about a choice. To protect. To act. To speak, when it counts. 1 week later, Elias sat under the stars with his wild friend curled beside him. The other kits had gone to the sanctuary, but he stayed. No name. No cage. Just a shared knowing between them. And then, just once more, in the hush of night, the bobcat called. Not loud. Not sad. But certain. And Elias knew, it wasn't just the canyon that had been waiting to hear him.